Welcome to Bunch Formation, the newest college football podcast. I'm Chris Giannini. I am all caught up on Love Island. He is David Ubben.
I've never seen an episode of Love Island.
He's apparently never seen Love Island, and he's also celebrating Father's Day. Two questions, Dave. One, did you get the Father's Day gift yet that you hinted at earlier?
Yes, I got a little plaque of me and my daughter, my youngest. So I had one of the older girl earlier, and then I also got a gift certificate to a new Korean barbecue place in town. So we're flying high.
Becca knows you. Your daughter's in Korean barbecue. That is what David Ubben does, for sure. So wait, you've never seen you for people who don't know Dave, he watches all kinds of reality TV and that type of stuff. So you haven't watched Love Island? I figured that'd be right up your alley.
No, I never watched Love Island. I feel like maybe 10 years ago, I watched 5 minutes of an episode. I was like, this is boring. I never watched it again. So no, I've seen people talking about it. I guess something crazy happened recently, but I have no context for that. I don't know.
I won't spoil it. I just got convinced by our former and current colleagues, Nicole Auerbach and Colton Pouncey, to watch it. So I've caught up. But you, Dave, you watch what, Married at First Sight in those types of shows?
Huge Married at First Sight guy. That's the show. Married at First Sight is the most underrated reality show on television, and nobody watches it. The good news is it just moved off of Lifetime onto Peacock. So Peacock is going to have the new season. We don't get Lifetime, so my wife and I literally would pay $20 on Amazon for the full season of Married at First Sight that just uploads to your Amazon account. I don't know how people don't watch Married at First Sight. It's incredible television.
Well, Love Island is also on Peacock, so I guess you can watch it there. We've got a good show today. We're going to preview the college football playoff meeting that David will be at later this week. We're going to talk our top impact transfers, because now we're in June. Now we're in
football,
talking about football again. I went to the mall with Ari Wasserman over the weekend. I got my Athlon Sports magazine. The only place I can find it is at Barnes & Noble nowadays. So
are you an Athlon guy over a Phil Steele guy, or are you double? Are you double fist an Athlon Phil Steele?
No, I'll sometimes get a Lindy's as well. I've never been the Phil Steele one, because it's not readable. It's just like a database, it's not
kind of.
I kind of prefer the Athlon ones. I mean, used to write for it back in the day. A lot of various college football writers would contribute. I prefer Athlon and Lindy's. I've been getting Athlon since I was in high school, so I try to keep doing that. We'll also not have any video game stuff on this show, but we will soon. Some of the embargoes are coming up quickly, and so when we can talk about various things, we will. But over the next week and a half, I think you'll see a lot more coming out about college football 26. Wanted to shout out a couple listeners. Heard back from some folks who called their grandparents after the way we closed the last show. After I had mentioned my last grandmother had passed, I told people to call your grandparents, and at least one listener did. Said it was a better conversation than he would have thought. So that's good. Great to hear that. Love to hear it. Call your grandparents, kids. It means a lot. If you haven't checked out the show notes, we've got timestamps in there now. If you want to jump ahead to another part of the show, send all your feedback to bunchformationpod@gmail.com, and also pretty much at Bunch Formation on everything on social media. If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe, leave a like. If you did, you saw the plaque that David just held up in front of the screen with his daughters. And actually, David, one other thing. We were just talking right before we started recording. So the U.S. Open golf tournament's on right now, but it's I think a weather delay. So they're showing the 2008 U.S. Open.
One of the best events ever in golf, yes.
For people who don't know, Dave is a huge golf guy.
Yeah.
Big time golfer. But you associate that tournament with something else you were just telling me.
So in addition to the broken leg that Tiger had, so I did not get to watch the 18-hole playoff on Monday between Tiger and Rocco Mediate because I was taking the LSAT. At this point, this is 2008. This was right before my senior year of college. I had basically decided I'm just going to go to law school. I applied for like 20 internships. I got 0 of them. I applied to them with some dated clips. I didn't have any of my most recent clips, so it's kind of part of it. But either way, it was very frustrating. And so I basically decided to go to law school, took the LSAT, but then that summer I got switched on to covering Missouri's football team for the Columbia Missourian, for the Missouri Method folks who know out there. That is the student newspaper staffed by professors and students at the University of Missouri. Anyway, so I did take the LSAT, but I never actually applied to law school because I just started covering the football team and won a couple awards and kind of started on the business. And here we are 17 years later. We're there. I don't remember exactly what I got. I think it was 157, 158, something like that. I honestly don't remember because I never really applied. But,
what's it out of? I don't know the context.
I think it's like 120 to 200. I forget. Like 150 is kind of like you can get into law school basically, and then like 185 ish, you like can get a full ride to every law school. I don't remember exactly the stage, but it's a very difficult test. I'll tell you, it's a lot of like logic and like it takes a lot of like I've never had to focus like that. Like I spent that whole summer like prepping for. Like I did a bunch of LSAT pre-tests. It's a tough test. I will say that. So
and now all of that work goes to good use, as most of our jobs as college football reporters now is reading through lawsuits and talking to lawyers and talking to members of Congress. So
I will say the LSAT you don't have any actual lawyer skills. It's more like logic and ways of thinking. There's no like study. Okay. This, unfortunately, or learning how to read or write legal briefs, unfortunately.
Can you like is that like one of those tests you can take like a free one online? Should we
probably yeah, it's not like I'm sure the old ones there's like it's just very logic based and there's like some writing elements of it. I don't remember all of it, but I remember it took way more concentration than like the ACT or the SAT or any other stuff that we took. And
we should look into taking this and see who does.
I'm not taking the LSAT again. It's incredibly hard. It's like a full half day. I mean, it was a whole thing. I'm not taking it.
Maybe again. Not. Maybe really not difficult.
Then. You can have at it. I'm very curious what I would get on the ACT if I took it because math, I've completely let any math skills go. So I'm very curious what I would do on the ACT these days.
Maybe we'll find some sort of bet and the loser has to take the LSAT or something like that. We'll figure it out. Please give us a review, a 5-star review if you haven't, wherever you listen to podcasts. We read all 5-star reviews on the show. We got one from J Sav Roll Wave, who says, excellent listen for anyone interested in the game, culture, and business of college football, CFP 25, 26, and beyond, as well as the occasional outlandish food take, which, side note, we actually haven't gotten into that much on the show, but I'm sure it will come up.
It happens because when we start traveling, it gets a little hairy. At home, that's a controlled environment. We're keeping pretty, like I smoked a pork butt for Father's Day. Like it's a controlled environment at home. You get on the road, that's where the Benihana Uber Eating starts happening, where people get all bent out of shape. Anyway.
Yes. JSF says, keep up the good work, Chris and Dave. And lastly, Cadillac Williams. Remember that guy? Yeah.
That's a complicated question because I remember obviously Cadillac the player, Thunder and Lightning, along with Ronnie Brown. But Cadillac the coach had a really nice run as an interim there at Auburn a couple of years back. Then left after a year under Hugh Freeze, and then he was with the Raiders, and then I think he got dismissed or something at the Raiders, and I'm not sure where he's at now. Hopefully he's somewhere this fall. I like Cadillac. Cadillac single-handedly revived Auburn football culture in like 1 month after Brian Harsin was fired.
Yes, and one of the greatest nicknames in sports.
Mm-hmm.
Cadillac, like that's incredible.
Going from Carnell to Cadillac, one of the great nickname upgrades in the history of sports, no question.
Yes. All right, and with that, we're going to get into the news segment of the show, the media scrum.
That's why I don't read the newspaper, because it's garbage.
College football playoff. The commissioners will meet once again this week in Asheville, North Carolina, as part of a larger commissioner of all the conferences get together. They usually do their summer meeting at some sort of resort or something like that. It's in Asheville again. So David is going to drive over because he's not too far over there in Knoxville. You know, at the last in-person meeting they had in Dallas, Heather Dinich and I think we were the only two there. We were talking to each other after the meeting and we were like, you know what? That next one in Asheville, that might be the one where something happens. Where it
Perhaps.
finally
We're
happens
sending
and
two people. I'll be there with our colleague.
Might need to be there. But now the feeling, shockingly, is not so much. It's always possible. But what happened at SEC meetings a couple of weeks ago really threw a wrench into everything. Dave, you're going. Ralph's going. Are you looking forward to sitting outside of a conference room?
So I haven't been to these in like 10 years. It's been a long time. I would go in Dallas periodically when I was kind of doing some national stuff for Sports on Earth. And then at ESPN, like I lived in Dallas, so I would do some of those things. But like once I moved to Tennessee, like I was covering Tennessee, and then like I moved up to our national staff, but like the CFP is not really my beat, so I don't do a ton of CFP. So it's been a long time since I've been to these meetings. It is very boring, but sometimes like sport altering news comes out of it. But I think one thing I'm interested to talk to people about is the SEC was we were throwing some shade at the committee, like question the committee's role in the sport. We had Greg Sankey talk about like, questioning some of the decisions. I'd like to talk to some of their commissioners, and I will if they'll talk, on or off the record. Like, how do you feel like the committee's going? How do you feel about the committee having so much control over the sport and the money in the sport? I'm gonna go out on a limb, Chris. I think the SEC is the only one that feels this way. You think I'm crazy?
Yes and no. So obviously the big thing is, what's the format going to be? Is it going to be the 4-4-2-2 that the Big Ten wants, or is it going to be the 5+11 that everybody outside the Big Ten and SEC wants?
Before you go on, it's notable that if we go to this 4-4-2-2 thing, the committee is going to be not irrelevant, but their role will be very much downplayed because a lot of these bids will be automatically handed out. If we go to the 5-11, the committee is arguably more relevant than ever. So anyway.
So the Big Ten's argument for the 4-4-2-2 is like, it gives more teams a chance to be in the mix if you finish in 6th place because you can make a play-in tournament. And hey, SEC, you don't have to worry about that committee you don't like so much. That's the Big Ten's pitch. And up until a couple weeks ago, the feeling was that the Big Ten and the SEC were mostly on the same page. And then some SEC coaches are saying, actually, we don't like 4-4-2-2. And Greg Sankey's talking about how people don't like 4-4-2-2. And suddenly the ACC and the Big 12 are like, wait a minute, we might be able to convince Greg Sankey not to do this. And so that has been going on since then. The committee part. This is what I don't understand. Greg Sankey, people in the SEC are saying we need to kind of reevaluate how the committee evaluates teams, emphasize strength of schedule, yada, yada, yada. Like, how? How do you do that?
Yes.
The committee is just people making up their mind. Like, it's not like they're swayed by one thing or the other. They know what the strength of schedule is. So when the SEC is like, can we get like assurances and stuff like that? Like maybe the committee will evaluate this more. I don't know what that literally means other than like publicly saying put more SEC teams in the field, right?
And a third of the committee is rolling off every year, sometimes more. We've seen quite a few people like quit early and end their terms early. Like, so even if somebody says, oh, we're going to do that, well, then what about the people who join the committee 2 years from now? And we're not going to have a committee of 9 SEC ADs. So much as they would love that, it's not going to happen. So I don't know. Again, I just feel like they're creating something out of nothing in here, and this complaining, I'm tired of it. To me, the complaining about the committee goes back to trash talk for me, where if you're on the field and you're talking trash or you're talking at somebody, if you're correct, I'll give you a lot of leeway to like yell and complain or talk at somebody. Like, I'm okay with it generally. But if you like, it's the Pat Bevs of the world who aren't that good, but want to talk like they're elite or talk about this or that. And the SEC, the complaining about the committee reeks more of a Pat Bev situation than like Anthony Edwards talking at somebody. It's like, I get that you're complaining. I get that you have all these things to say. I just don't think that you're right. And so I don't have a lot of patience for that.
Well, I think it's what we've talked about before, which was like the SEC has gotten the benefit of the doubt from the committee pretty much all the time.
Complaining about the committee doesn't make sense. And when you want to talk about strength of schedule, we're talking about 3 lost teams getting consideration ranked over being in the conversation with 1 and 2 lost teams. That's the strength of schedule argument, despite you even playing 8 games in conference play versus 9 in the ACC and the Big Ten.
The thing that annoys, I don't want to it's just like a conclusion now that we're going to expand to 16 teams because the SEC and Big Ten want that. And I get why you have to agree to that if you're the Big 12 and the ACC, but I think 16 teams is going to suck. Before anything else, we're going to have a lot of 3-loss teams in the field now. I don't think 3-loss teams should for the most part be in the tournament. Maybe 1 or 2 get in there. Now we're just opening, this is going to make it harder. We're going to have harder decisions on who gets those last at-large spots by expanding it further. So, because you're just going to have more teams that are bundled up. Imagine if instead of SMU versus Alabama, it was SMU, Alabama, Miami, South Carolina, whoever was BYU. Imagine kicking just one of those teams out instead of one to be in.
Yes.
That's a lot harder. So,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
This goes back to the existential question about the playoff. Okay, this is why I'm an 8-team guy. I'm an 8-team guy because I want every team that has a legitimate claim to compete for the national championship included, and then maybe 1 or 2 others. And if you go 6 teams, I think we could go back in 30 years of football and you would never find more than 4 or 5 teams that you know what, they should have had a chance to play for it or whatever. I want all those teams to get a shot. And then we can throw in a couple more. Was there anybody last year at the 12 that, other than Greg Sankey, I guess, feeling man, there's some teams that deserve to be in here? 12 was too many. Listen, SMU and Indiana, they deserve to get in the field. They didn't need to play in the playoff. We knew SMU and Indiana were not national championship caliber teams. Boise State, this was not a year where we needed to have a G5. I want to have a G5 seat at the table, but nobody would have been crying if they didn't get a chance to compete. They had a chance and they lost to Oregon. It's fine.
The fact that we had all those first-round blowouts was a reason not to expand any further.
Yes.
We're just going to have even more. So
we know these are not – the point of the playoff is to find the national champion. Those were not national championship caliber teams. Very good teams. So now we're going to include more mediocrity in the playoff. So that's, again, I don't like the expansion either, but I've sort of just been resigned to it because we know it's going to happen and there's no point yelling at the clouds. But it is, I think, important to note, Chris, as you said, this kind of sucks, just for the record.
And the only reason it's happening is because the Big Ten and the SEC expanded to such an extent that they have to make a field that gets as many of their teams in. If you expand to 16, more SEC teams will be in the field either way, whichever model you do. The Big Ten knows you're not as deep as the SEC. So you got to expand and you can make your play-in tournament so you can get your 6th place team that your 8-4 Iowa that wouldn't have been in the conversation before is now in the conversation via a play-in game. That's why this is happening. To give more teams, the Big Ten, it's Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Oregon at the top, and then a lot of I don't know. And that's probably how it's going to be for the foreseeable future. It's a very top-heavy conference. So if you're the Big Ten,
no faith in Lincoln Riley, Chris. Dang.
If you're the Big Ten, you have to find other ways to keep more teams involved in the play-in tournament is a way to do that, and you sell that for more money, which is the only thing that matters nowadays. So the thing to look for this week is, one, is Tony Petitti going to talk to you guys? Because he has been silent about all of this. There was no media availability at the Big Ten conference meetings, while the SEC went out and talked every day and had slideshows and stuff like that. And Tony Petitti, from what I understand, was kind of perturbed by that. And so we have all asked Tony Petitti, do you want to talk publicly? And they have declined so far. And so he's losing the narrative here on the play-in tournament. As much as Urban Meyer can go on his podcast and Joel Klatt can go on his podcast, the people who work for Fox, and say, a 4-4-2-2 is a great idea. That doesn't really matter. You need the guy who's going to upend the sport actually talking about it. So will Tony talk about it this week? That's what I want to know. And does he get back on the same page with Greg Sankey? We will see. We will have a report later in the week from Auburn and Ralph Russo for The Athletic. So that is the playoff. Anything else you wanted to say on that?
No, it's going to be, like you said, it's hard with these playoff meetings to know if it's going to be something or nothing. But even if they don't decide anything, there's a lot to talk about here. And so that'll be interesting.
Yeah, it'll probably be the last time they talk until media days. So
yeah,
we will see. All right, and with that, we're going to get into our 5 impact transfers, the biggest impact transfers we think are going to happen this season. We're going to throw this under the heat check segment.
Throw him in the garbage.
Gus, my
This
guy.
is for when we have takes, and I guess this qualifies as a take. So we'll go 1-1 here. My number 1, I think it's the biggest impact transfer in the whole sport. John Mateer, quarterback from Washington State to Oklahoma. I'm not fully sold on him yet as like the guy, because he basically played a Mountain West schedule last year. I think he's really talented, and his running ability is going to help him out a lot. I think Oklahoma's got a high ceiling, low floor type of year. Like this,
I think that's fair. If Oklahoma went 11-1 or 10-2 next year, I wouldn't be floored. I don't think that's going to happen. But like,
no, and same if they went like 7-5.
Yeah.
You know? So, and with Mateer, he's got his offensive coordinator Ben Arbuckle, who came with him, who actually came first, and then Mateer came, and so it's fully on his back. They added Jaden Ott as well. He'll help. The
Jaden Ott. I mean, how much better is Jaden Ott than anybody that Mateer played with at Washington State last year? I would say sizably.
Yes, when he's healthy. Yeah. So I could have put the two of them together. I just wanted to pick one, but Mateer here. You know, again, Oklahoma could go a lot of different ways. I've been trying to get up to Norman and just haven't been able to schedule something. But Oklahoma, they've gone all in here for Brent Venables. Like they have given him everything he wants. He's got a GM now and Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl. They just recently kind of upgraded that GM staff. They got another offense coordinator, Arbuckle brought in. They got the big quarterback. They got the big running back transfer. Venables is now going to be calling the defensive plays. So like, it's been a weird couple of years for Venables. Like, I think Oklahoma fans are feeling vindicated with Lincoln Riley leaving and them feeling like, you know, he wasn't that great, Lincoln Riley. And based on what has happened at USC, it's kind of up in the air. I think they feel right about that. But I don't think they feel... What?
I mean, ultimately, yes. But also, I think this was the divorce where they both go their separate ways and are both worse off without the other.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like they weren't necessarily wrong about Lincoln Riley, but they haven't been proven right about Brent Venables yet either. And that is the thing we're waiting for. It's been very up and down. You know, 2 years ago he had the big season with Dylan Gabriel, but then you put all your eggs in the Jackson Arnold basket and it doesn't work. And it's kind of a big reset this year. I mean, Oklahoma, like, again, Dave, you covered Oklahoma. You worked at the Oklahoma. Like,
they don't lose.
They do not lose. Other than
Ohio State, it might be the most recession-proof program in the history of college football. Like, people think like, oh, you know, Alabama or Georgia or Michigan or these places. Like, Oklahoma has not had like a run of this poor of a like a 3-4 year stretch in a long time.
There was that brief run in the 90s under John Blake. And then Bob Stoops comes in and wins the national championship. Oklahoma, I think, is still the winningest program in the country since World War II. Like, it's a thing they really lean on. So, big year for Brent Venables, and it's all going to be on the back of John Mateer. So, for better or worse, I think Mateer is like the number one guy. What about you?
I'm intrigued by him. I think he's going to be fun. I'm with you generally on him. My number one, another quarterback. We'll have some quarterbacks on here, but not all quarterbacks. Carson Beck in Miami. I think this is the most interesting quarterback transfer maybe ever. I don't know about ever, but it's definitely the most interesting one overall. So Carson Beck comes into last season. There's a little bit of like, could he be the number one pick conversation? Didn't have a lot of tools necessarily, like elite tools, I should say. But you watched his tape from 2023. It was incredible. He did not have a good year last year. Had that stretch in the middle of the season where I think he had like 6 touchdowns and 11 picks. I forget what the numbers were. It was very bad. And then, of course, he has the elbow injury in the SEC championship. We don't really see him again. It's been a weird run for Carson Beck. He gets paid over $3 million to go to Miami. But then, like, some of the conversation out of Georgia and some of the conversation around Gunnar Stockton, again, kind of throwing some shade at Carson Beck. guys were, well, we're gonna rally around Gunnar Stockton. He's like a alpha in the way that maybe Carson wasn't. Carson gets dragged on a social media video by his ex-girlfriend. It's been a tough run for Carson. And I think this is an opportunity, whether he takes advantage of it or not, we'll see, to reclaim a lot of that stuff from 2023, to sort of stick it to Georgia a little bit. Miami, they're still trying to break through. They still want to get to the playoff. They'll still have an opportunity here. He's not Cam Ward, but Cam Ward people forget, Cam Ward was not like a slam dunk when he got to Miami. Like, he'd had some up and down times in Washington State. People were not just like, oh yeah, Cam Ward, he's going to walk into Miami at number 1 pick. So you go to Miami, they're still trying to break through. They're still trying to get to the playoff. I think this is a team that can be really, really interesting. They lose Xavier Restrepo. They added CJ Daniels over from LSU, the former Liberty player. Didn't have a great year at LSU last year. There's some pieces here at Miami, and obviously still very active in the portal. I'm really fascinated to see this. I think he'll have better weapons than he did last year at Georgia. And maybe that's part of some of this conversation too, that people just assumed was Georgia, they're going to reload, and didn't think about how good Brock Bowers was and how good Ladd McConkey was. And all you have to do is look at those guys' rookie seasons in the NFL and say, like, oh, those were pretty big difference makers in a lot of different ways. And so he'll have upgraded weapons here. I'm fascinated to see how this goes with Carson Beck at Miami.
Well, I think the injury is the most notable part of it too. Like, he
didn't play in the spring, and they still get and. An elbow seems like a big deal for a quarterback. Maybe that's just me. So, yeah, you might want to get healthy, and that seems like a big body part you don't want to have a problem
with.
With.
So, like, he has to adjust to a new team and rehab from an injury in a generally short amount of time, because it was at the end of the season. It's not like he missed the fall. And like, right off the bat, you got Notre Dame week 1. You got Florida 3 weeks later, Florida State right after that, Louisville after that. Like, it's going to be right out of the bat, we're gonna know, like, is Miami gonna be in this mix or not? So that will be interesting.
That Florida game's gonna be really interesting. I mean, they really embarrassed them last year. We had the recruiting issue at the end. You just walk into the swamp and stomp all over them. And now Florida seemed to figure some stuff out last season. They've had a full off season of, like, DJ Ladd is the guy. I'm intrigued.
Like, it feels like Florida has the most momentum out of the big 3 in Florida, which is crazy.
But Chris, that can change in one Saturday. That can change in one Saturday.
I'm saying it for sure. I'm just saying, like, it's weird to feel best about Florida when halfway through last season we thought Billy Napier was about to be fired.
It's a fully Lagway based economy. So outside of that, it's like
that, and what happened to the other 2? Florida State going 2-10, and Miami losing some guys, and the uncertainty around Carson Beck. If Carson Beck is what he was in 23, then that changes very quickly. If Miami beats Notre Dame week 1 and Carson Beck looks great, like, people are going to be getting on that Miami train. So,
yeah, I think so. And I think too, quite frankly, going from Mike Bobo to Shannon Dawson, the OC at Georgia, to the OC at Miami, I read that as a big upgrade. Maybe that's just me.
All right, my second impact transfer, Mekhi Hughes, running back, Oregon.
You've been on the Mekhi Hughes bandwagon. This is your guy.
I've been on this for a while. I loved him at Tulane. He spent the last 2 years at Tulane, had more than 1,300 yards each of the last 2 years, more than 1,400 yards last year.
Better or worse than Tajay Spears in your mind?
Ooh, I'd probably stick with Tajay Spears right now, because that dude was electric. And I don't know if Mekhi Hughes is quite there yet, but he could be. But Tajay Spears, maybe it's because I watched him in person run over the Alex Grinch USC defense, and so that was kind of on a curve.
The list of people who have done that is long. So,
but so, like, obviously Oregon is breaking in Dante Morris, quarterback. He's not a new guy. He's been there for 2 years, which helps. And he also played a bit at UCLA, so he's a third-year guy with playing experience, and everybody there seems to love him. But he's a bit of an unknown. And now Evan Stewart, the receiver, is hurt. You don't know how long that'll be. So you may need to rely on this running game a bit more. Like, it's been a very pass-heavy, emphasized offense with Bo Nix, Dylan Gabriel. I think you might see Oregon run the ball more. And I think Hughes, Oregon's going to be another preseason top 5 team probably. And I think Hughes, like, he was really low on I think 247's transfer ratings, like in the 20s or 30s. I put this guy like top 5. I think he's going to be a huge impact.
I like it. I'm interested to see. I mean, Oregon, People sleep on because they don't have the power backs. I mean, you look at the last 15 years of college football, the list of places that have had like a better run of running backs is not that long. Like Oregon's had a run of some really, really good guys there. I like that pick. I'm gonna go. We'll save the Auburn duo for together. How about that? We'll talk about both of them at the same time. I'm gonna go with all the Texas Tech guys. Texas Tech. So LSU had a better transfer class, but people are used to LSU bringing in talent. This Texas Tech situation is super interesting. They've been easily the biggest story of the portal this offseason, if you missed it. They've added a ton of guys, and it's a roster made by oil money from Cody Campbell. You can feel about that however you want, but the thing that I think is interesting about this is they added a ton on the lines. You got David Bailey, the defensive lineman from Stanford, Lee Hunter, the defensive lineman from UCF. You get your offensive lineman, Howard Sampson from UNC, a guy that a ton of accolades a year ago. Skylar Gill-Howard from NIU. They got a lot of pieces from to bolster both lines of scrimmage. And I think as sexy as adding receivers and quarterbacks and things that get people talking, if you're really good on both lines, you can be pretty average in a lot of places. And like Baron Morton, really good quarterback, had some health issues. I don't know that anybody is like beating down the door talking about Baron Morton. But I think if you play behind an offensive line, and that's good. And you lose Micah Hudson and you add him back. Whatever he ends up being is interesting.
Does that count as an addition? I don't know.
But I think either way, I think they're going to be fine at receiver. And I'm just fascinated to see how this goes because for better or worse, like Texas Tech is kind of going to be the new Texas in the Big 12 in terms of when teams watch them play. Like if Texas Tech goes 8-4, I mean, they're going to be roasted into oblivion by Big 12 fans. A lot of Big 12 attention will be on Texas.
That's the thing. Like Joey McGuire in 3 years, he's gone 8-5, 7-6, 8-5.
Mm-hmm.
Not great, not terrible, but like by Texas Tech standards, that's good. Actually really good. Yes. And I think in terms of a 3-year start, it's only behind, I think, Mike Leach, like in the history of the program. So like, but 8-5 is not good enough this year. Not with the money that they've put into that. Like not to say, hey, if it doesn't work out, we're not spending money. Cody Campbell's going to keep spending money. But in terms of like, Joey McGuire's like job security. Like you got to have a breakthrough season this year in a Big 12 that is going to be pretty loaded. Like Kansas State, Arizona State, BYU, like
there's going to be, it feels like the Big 12 has like 5 really spicy 9-win teams. Yeah. Can anybody survive that and go like 10-2, 11-1? I don't know.
Yeah. And the other thing, you compare Texas Tech to LSU. Texas Tech, the guys they got on the line compared to LSU, like somewhat similar. But Texas Tech is going up against Big 12 lines, not SEC lines. I'm a little side note, I'm a little concerned about the haul that LSU had because yes, they got a lot of guys in the trenches that they needed, but in the SEC, you need like NFL level guys in the. I don't know if LSU got that. Texas Tech doesn't need that. They just need good enough guys, and I think they probably got.
Is Texas Tech like? I mean, I wouldn't say Colorado is defined because I think Big 12 fans were kind of annoyed about Colorado. Is Texas Tech like going to be the defining team in the Big 12 this season? At least coming into the season, probably, right?
Defining,
ultimately,
like,
whoever's winning at the end is going to be the team that people are watching every week. But I think in terms of storyline and the highest percentage of opposing fan interest, I would say is Texas Tech, right?
It could be. I mean, you'd kind of have to know, but I do think a lot of fans know the money that Texas Tech is throwing around now. We just saw it in the Women's College World Series. They nearly beat Texas to win that. Have you seen what Texas Tech is doing in softball, by the way?
Yeah, it's incredible.
They've got like several really good players transferring.
They just went and got basically they looked at the All-American team and were like, we'll just take all of them, please. One of everything, please.
And that's like one of the interesting things about NIL is like you can just pick a sport you want to be good in, throw money at it, and be good at that sport. And
so this is interesting. I don't want to derail this.
I don't think it's a bad thing.
We're talking about transfers. So I thought this was really interesting. So I did last year, I did a speech on NIL at this investment conference. Okay. And I'm ashamed to admit that a lot of the questions that they asked were better than most of the questions that I hear in press conferences from our colleagues in the media. They asked really good questions and really interesting questions, and questions that like made me think, that were really, really interesting. But one of the questions that one of the guys asked me afterwards was like, well, hey, my daughter is getting ready to go play soccer in college. Like, what would stop me from just going and paying and getting all the best players and like buying her a national championship and paying for all the players? I'm like, well, nothing really. I mean, you could go to the collective and say, here's $10 million, go get me a women's soccer national championship. I don't know that there's a lot of people that want to do that, but if you could, there's theoretically nothing stopping you. And this is the first time that we're kind of seeing a team like Texas Tech go all in a like non-revenue sport in women's softball. And Texas Tech, I mean, it's quite a time to be a Red Raider. Between Cody Campbell hitting it in the oil and having the highest paid quarterback in the history of college football, or in the history of the NFL, like put his name all over your facility and meeting rooms. Texas Tech, things are coming up Red Raiders of late.
And they just opened that huge, giant new football facility, which might be the last of its kind now.
Maybe
with the revenue sharing era. So they got that in just. So Texas Tech added 3 All-Americans and UCLA's top pitcher in a week.
I think here's the thing. People complain about it, but this is basically like the decision version of women's softball. The decision was great for the NBA because immediately you had like, oh, LeBron's a villain. Like, I hate this Heat team. I want this Heat team. I want them to have all of the worst things in the world happen to them. When's the last time that there was like a women's softball team that people just wanted to see suffer? And like, that's like
never
from the start of the season, especially once we get into the NCAA tournament next year, people are going to be rooting hard against this Texas Tech team.
And more than anything,
like this idea.
More than anything, they will be rooting. They will be paying attention.
Exactly. There will be storylines, and people will care about this a lot. And
part
so
of the reason the
I think
ratings were so high.
Yes, I think it's like without fail a fantastic thing for women's softball that Texas Tech has decided to do this, because it's super interesting. It's an experiment, and you have caused an emotional reaction among college fans. Like, people that don't really care that much about softball all of a sudden really care about softball, because they're like, well, I don't like this. You shouldn't be able to do this. And it's like, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but people are going to care.
Which is why the salary cap thing is so interesting now, because presumably Texas Tech won't have that much money. Because if you're putting $15 million, let's say, to football, you only got $5 million left. Maybe you put 3 of that to men's basketball. Like, there's not much money left for softball. And so, like, part of this was getting those in before House happened to try so they didn't count toward the next year. But it will take that NIL money out of sports like that and into sports like football, which is, unless, you decide to pay somebody under the table, which we know can happen. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, back to, we kind of got off track there. I'm going to bring it back around to Georgia. Zachariah Branch, wide receiver. He was electric at USC as I think, freshman in 2023. Receiving, special teams, really, really fast guy. He didn't really do that last year. But I'm curious, getting into Georgia, is he kind of the fast electric weapon that they didn't have last year? You and I, from the beginning of the season, did not love Georgia's outside weapons, especially after some of the losses and guys kicked off the team.
I mean, even watching the Clemson game, I was like, ugh, I don't love this.
So like, the physical tools we know are there for Zachariah Branch. In Georgia last year, they were 51st in passes of 40-plus yards. That's down from 8th in 2023. So they were not hitting the explosive pass plays. I think Zachariah Branch is a guy who can get them those plays. Now, can Gunnar Stockton get it there? We'll see. I think we need to see more of him, obviously. But I think there's a chance here that Branch, in a new system, could really break out and get back to that 2023 form. Use him in a lot of different formations and different things. I still like the upside. Former 5-star kid. That first year at USC, he was really good.
Yeah, I remember watching him and just being so impressed. And then last year, being kind of like, well, now it's kind of your time. And he never really, like, they had all these guys, like Kyron Hudson's gone, obviously Branch and his brother are, both pieced out of USC. it was weird to watch. And so the thing with him, and we see this conversation a lot with receivers and sometimes running backs, but receivers too, is like, well, we know you're an athlete, but can you play receiver? Because so much of it is like hips and leverage and like, body control and all these things, like catching the ball, route running, all these things that are outside of your athletic ability. It's the Ladd McConkey thing. Like, well, why is Ladd McConkey so good? Well, it's leveraging his body and change of direction and all these things. And like, he's not the greatest athlete. He's not that like big and not that straightforward fast. But when you know how to run routes and get open, you're a weapon. And that's the question for him. And I hope that he can make that leap coming from USC, because I'm watching him last year. He was a non-factor almost the whole season, and it was very surprising to me. And so we saw that. I mean, watching him that first year, I was like, oh, this is the next like Tavon Austin. This guy is unbelievable. Yeah. And I didn't watch a ton of USC in the back half of last season, but when I did watch them in the first half, when they were still more relevant, I didn't see the flashes like ever. And some of that is maybe some of the running, the being a receiver skill that you need to have. But I think some of that too is you got to find creative ways to get him the ball. You're Lincoln Riley. You're the offensive wonderkin. Like, what can you do? And so now that's on Mike Bobo at Georgia to figure some stuff out. Say, hey, let's get him the ball in space. And okay, maybe you aren't the greatest route runner. Maybe you aren't the greatest this or that, but you're hard to tackle. And historically, guys that are hard to tackle seem to thrive in college football, but you've got to put them in position to succeed. And so that's the question for Georgia here coming forward.
Yep. What do you got?
My next one is Casey Concepcion at Texas A&M. He's another guy, a little bit like Zachariah Branch. Now, you can use him in some interesting ways. Like, NC State loved to use him on some jet sweeps, get him the ball in really interesting ways. But I think there's an element of the ceiling at NC State is what it is. I think last year, with all of their issues and the frustration that comes with that, I think he wanted to see it somewhere bigger, and I'm sure A&M is paying him well also. So, take from that what you will. But ultimately, I love a lot of the creativity from Colin Klein. I think he's going to have a lot of opportunities. I think he's going to be a guy that can be a huge weapon for them. And A&M seemed to have a lot of like big receivers and guys that you needed to make plays on contested catches. And Chris, you and I saw it up front at the A&M Texas game last year. Just offensively, they just didn't have any answers for Texas when they couldn't run the ball. They had nowhere to really go with Marcel Reed. And I think Concepcion can add an element of this offense that we haven't really seen. I think he's really important for Texas A&M and a fun player. And Texas A&M, we've been missing the fun players at A&M for a while. I think Concepcion can offer that.
Yeah, and kind of similar to Zachariah Branch is what is the quarterback situation? Does Marcel Reed take that step forward? Does Gunnar Stockton? I don't know. We'll see. Speaking of quarterbacks, Miller Moss at Louisville, going from USC to Louisville. He won the job. He basically kept the starting job at USC 2 years ago because of what he did against Louisville in the bowl game. Now he's there, and the Jeff Brom reclamation project just continues to go to work. Like, the amount of guys he's gotten in the NFL, like, I don't think it's like 5 or 6 guys. You got Jack Plummer, came with him from Purdue, Aiden O'Connell, who'd been starting in the NFL, David Blau. Those guys haven't done much in the NFL, but then you have Tyler Shuck.
But the thing is, when they don't do anything in the NFL, that's almost a credit to Jeff Brom. Yes. It's like you didn't just have
got them to an NFL level. Guys,
when coaches have a guy and he's not good, and then he flourishes in the NFL, I look kind of sideways at you, like, what were you doing? What's the deal?
Yeah. And then you got Tyler Shuck, who was, I think, a third-round pick in this last year's draft. Like, I think Miller Moss is going to do a really good job here. Jeff Brom knows what he's doing with quarterbacks. They've still got some good receivers and good running backs. I think this is going to be a really good offense. I think Louisville is going to be in the ACC picture. And yeah, I mean, like, if you look at Miller Moss's numbers at USC, they weren't bad, but like, it just wasn't exactly clicking for whatever reason. And it didn't really click with Jaden Maiava either. But I think I think the upside is higher there. You kind of think like, well, wait a minute. He's a quarterback who left Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley always turns guys into NFL dudes, just like Jeff Brom. Isn't it a red flag for Miller Moss to leave? Maybe, I don't know, but you're going from Lincoln Riley to Jeff Brom. Those are two really good quarterbacks coaches.
Last year, I wowould like to see a short documentary on what was going on at USC last year. It seemed to have some of the worst vibes imaginable. Like, just watching them, I was just like, everyone out here just seems like they are just hating life right
like
now.
you lose to, was it Rutgers at the very end?
They had a bunch of really close
Washington.
losses. Like the LSU thing started them off in the wrong way, but then they won that LSU game, right? Yes, they did.
Yeah, yes, they beat LSU at the end. But
yes,
they
and they had a bunch of close losses.
Lose to
Minnesota
Michigan.
Lost, the Rutgers.
They lose to Michigan because they give up that long run late in the game. They lose to Minnesota at the very end. Penn State, they blow the lead and lose in overtime. Maryland is another one lead that they blew. They had like leads in I think all of the games they lost. So like they weren't far off, but it's not like they're just running it back because Miller Moss is gone, Zachariah Branch is gone. Like I don't know, the vibes are weird. I don't know what to expect from USC this year, but I think Miller Moss is going to have a good, solid season. You know, like that's a good college quarterback who may find his way into being like a late round NFL pick.
I'm with you on this. Let's have the Auburn conversation.
Well, no, you got one more before Auburn.
Well, we'll just do the Auburn conversation now.
Okay.
We'll jump ahead. I have Eric Singleton on here with Auburn. You have Jackson Arnold. This is fascinating. Because
Jackson Arnold, by the way, quarterback from Oklahoma, former 5-star transfer.
Yes.
Singleton coming from Georgia Tech, wide receiver.
We're in full-blown fantasy football mode in the portal era. And sometimes it's interesting, sometimes it's not that interesting. Auburn football in 2025 is going to be super interesting because you've added all these pieces. And why did they hire Hugh Freeze other than that he beat Nick Saban, Chris?
Because he knows how to get talent.
Well, that sort of, NIL before NIL, but
got in trouble for it.
But offensive prowess, and their offense has been horrible since he got there. Now, some of that is just not having the personnel. He hasn't had a quarterback. The why that is, I don't know. But ultimately, you got a quarterback with tools now in Jackson Arnold. And Jackson Arnold, most crucially, has actual receivers. Last year, all their receivers are hurt. This year, when you have Eric Singleton, you have maybe Cam Coleman growing up, taking the next step, a 5-star that had some moments as a true freshman. But you go get Eric Singleton here. So now you've given Eric Singleton a better quarterback. God bless Haynes King, great player. Could have added more. Cam Coleman, kind of same thing. You get them a guy with tools, and then you get Jackson Arnold, a team with receivers. Are they the team? Can they take a leap and be actually good? I don't know. But I'm going to be watching, and they're super, super interesting for me, and they're going to have a huge impact. So you had Jackson Arnold on your list. I had Eric Singleton on my list. What is your thought for where Auburn will be in 2025?
I mean, it's got to be better. They went 5-7 last year, and they keep losing to Diego Pavia. He cannot escape him.
Do they have Auburn? Do they have Vandy again?
I assume
probably
they do.
Not because it's cross. It would have been old cross divisional game, but still.
No, yes, they do. November 8th.
I may have to cover that game. I got to tell you, I want to watch that anyway.
You're gonna have to probably beat out Joe Rexrode to call that. But you know what? So Hugh Freeze in 2 years. You know what his record is at Auburn? It's 11-14. He went 6-7, then 5-7. You know what Brian Harson's record was at Auburn?
I believe it was 13-14, wasn't it?
It was 11-14.
Okay.
Or he might have been. I don't know. No, I think he might have been fired. But Brian Harson's 2 seasons, Auburn went 6-7 and 5-7. I think that's when Cadillac took over. It hasn't been any better, and that's concerning. And that doesn't mean I think they're going to pull the plug on Hugh Freeze and pay another gigantic buyout to a coach. But like, Hugh Freeze knew going into last year that they didn't have the horses, and he publicly called out quarterbacks and stuff like that. Peyton Thorne and the like. What did he play? Like 3 different quarterbacks in some of those games? Like it was a real mess. And so Jackson Arnold comes in. Is he damaged goods? I thought Oklahoma pulled the plug on him too early last year. It was very quick. I think it was after or during that Tennessee game. And they go to Hawkins, who could not throw the ball forward. And so it's like, what are you doing at this point? And Jackson Arnold eventually comes back in later in the year and did okay. And his eventual numbers were there, but you burned a redshirt opportunity. And I have to imagine any trust was gone at that point. So Jackson Arnold, what is he going to be in an offense that has wide receivers now? Because Oklahoma didn't have them last year. I'm very curious kind of what the momentum is. Can they keep keep things from spiraling if it goes poorly. Because they open with Baylor on the road. I may try to go to that game.
Mm-hmm.
And then 4 weeks later, they go to Oklahoma. Jackson Arnold's going back to Oklahoma. And then you've got A&M, Georgia, like Alabama end of the year. It's a tough schedule. So I don't know. With Auburn, like Auburn's such a weird program. They've won more than 8 games, once since 2017.
Mm-hmm.
A 9-4 season in 2019. This is a program that's been going 6-7, 5-7, 6-5, 8-5. Outside of 2010 when they win the title, 2013 when they play for the title, and then that 2017 team that made a late run. Like that's it. It's been the highs are highs and the lows are pretty low at Auburn. And so is this the year they get a high?
Could be.
I mean, they put the effort into it. They've got the talent. You have to make it happen. So very curious. They're going to be one of the most interesting teams.
Chris, I got to tell you, Tiger just hit a 12-footer to force a playoff at the U.S. Open. So it's big time.
2008, man.
I was texting. So I have a side chat with my college friends who care about golf. It's a subset of a separate chat. Anyway, there's like 5 of us in there, and I was lamenting today. I was like, I really just miss Tiger. It's sad.
Look, it goes back to what we just said. Like it's like the NBA Finals conversation. You need superstars because they're interesting. You need characters. And did you see the comment from Magic Johnson the other day? He was asked what makes a superstar. And
did he just say someone who scores a lot of points and wins games? Because if it's on par with his tweets, then probably, yeah.
No, Magic said very simply, if when he plays on the road, people buy a ticket to go see him.
All right.
That's it, man. That's it. Like
I've done that on 2 separate occasions.
Yeah.
So I went to go see Kobe and the Lakers in OKC in 2008. I went with my mom and dad, and then I went to do that. I think I did the same thing with LeBron and at some point. I think early in his career in OKC. So yeah.
So that's
fair.
I think that's what it is. Like in fairness to Tyrese Halliburton and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I don't think they're on that level. You don't
not close.
Go see them yet. I mean, they could get there, but like that's business because sports is ultimately business. And do you have those stars? And college football hasn't had really those stars in a while. We talked about on the last episode. So will Arch Manning be that? We will see. You got one more here on the impact transfers.
I got one more. It's our guy Caden Salter at Colorado. So a lot of the conversation on Caden has been
quarterback from Liberty.
Coming over from Liberty. Couple things on him. One, a lot of this conversation has been, Shedeur. It's a lot of Shedeur-centric conversation because Shedeur was a superstar. I think we can agree with that, Chris. People cared about him.
Probably one of the 2 or 3 most famous players in the sport. Yeah.
Yeah. People cared about what he was doing. Anyway, so a lot of the conversations, what's he going to do to replace him? And also Juju Lewis coming in. You bring in a blue chip quarterback to a program. People are going to be talking about that. But the deal with Caden Salter is, yes, he's coming over from Liberty. He was a 4-star himself. He has got some tools. He started his career at Tennessee, had some really good times at Liberty. Last year with a worse offensive line, had some struggles. He's going to be playing behind better line play at Colorado than people think. Their offensive and defensive lines should be even better. And on top of that, you should still have not to the same level receivers that they've had the last couple of years for sure, but still very, very good. Marion Miller can probably step up there. Draylon Miller is kind of a flex guy that they use. They got a lot of pieces there. I think Caden Salter, people still care about Colorado. They're not as relevant as they were the last couple of years, but they are still going to be a team that causes a reaction in people one way or the other because of who was on the sidelines. And Dion has had a really quiet offseason. We haven't heard hardly anything from him compared to the last 2 seasons.
Like literally, they don't know. Like literally, he's not even in Boulder right now.
Yes,
we talked about. We talked about his health situation on the last.
Yes.
show.
But it's been interesting, and I don't know exactly why that is. He seems to have backed off some of the bold proclamations about like making the playoff early on, and the first year he was fending off the haters. Some would say haters, others would say people asking fair questions, whatever we want to describe that as. But it's been a quiet offseason, and I think Caden Salter is going to be a household name very quickly. I think they'll both play. I think both him and Juju Lewis will play. I think it's probably going to start with Salter, but he's a good player in his own right. And I think I'm really intrigued to see what he does when he's got this moment in the spotlight, because he's been a really good player that not a lot of people have paid attention to. And that moment in the Fiesta Bowl, I mean, I think most people turn that Fiesta Bowl off 5 minutes in. He hasn't had like a big spotlight on him, and he's going to have one in Boulder. And I think he's going to answer the call out there.
His numbers in 2023 were insane. Like 40 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and he ran for 1,000 yards. Like, this guy's got talent.
He does.
And it took him a minute to get adjusted to the system that Jamie Chadwell ran over there. Now he's going to be running probably more of a pro style deal, right? Like they pretty much have.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard. If you want me to break down Colorado's offense, like there's some pro stuff in there, but there's still like some leftovers from the Sean Lewis Baylor stuff that they were running. Like,
but it's very much not.
It's very much was weird last year.
It's very much not what Jamie Chadwell is running.
Yes.
And so I'm very curious how that'll go. Will he stand in the pocket and deliver some throws like Shedeur did and took hits? Or will he look to run at the first sign of pressure, which may happen behind a line that has been not great? But I think there's a real upside here. Like, I think everybody knows Juju Lewis and thinks 5-star quarterback going to Colorado, like he's going to be the future there. I think it's very possible that we end up talking about Caden Salter a lot more as the season goes on. And that's it. So those are the transfers. Keeping track of all this stuff is difficult. There's a lot of movement. I grabbed these magazines to try to remember where everybody went. It's very. I
see at least one guy every day or something where somebody will reference it and be like, "Oh, hey, he's there."
We also got
the video game quick.
Yes, exactly. In the last episode, I mentioned Alex Orji and UNLV. We got a text from Antonio Morales who mentioned, by the way, Calandra is over at UNLV now. Came from Virginia, so actually had another one who I hadn't even remembered.
And Anthony Calandra was part of a cursed 3-headed monster at quarterback at Virginia that was not good. I don't remember who the other two guys were, but I remember watching them play an ACC game on like Thursday night and being like, "Ugh, I don't know what's going on here. This is not good."
Speaking of remembering, it's time to get into our newest, most exciting segment. Remember some guys.
What's better than this? Guys being dudes.
This is the segment where we name a former college football player and we say, remember that guy? My choice this week, B.J. Simmons, quarterback at Texas Tech, 1999 to 2003. In that last season, he had 5,833 passing yards, which was the record up until Bailey Zappi broke it a couple of years ago. Actually did a story on BJ back in 2020 when COVID shut everything down and we had to just find stuff to write about. And so we basically did a segment of like, remember some guys. I think Nicole wrote about Timmy Chang, I think. So I was like, I'll just do BJ Simmons.
Yeah.
Talk to him. I'll throw that story in the show notes. But
I think 4,500 of those 5,800 yards were on mesh, if I'm not mistaken.
This was right as this early 2000s was right as I was getting into college football. And I have this memory of me and my buddy I played hockey with in the street, just like throwing passes to each other and doing stuff. And I remember I kept pretending I was BJ Simmons because I just saw the number. I just saw the numbers he was putting up every week. And I was just like, this is blowing my mind. Remember, this is 2003.
Yeah, we had not seen 400-yard passers were not a thing.
No, and this was happening every single week. He outdueled Eli Manning when they played Ole Miss that season. So really, he finished somewhere in the Heisman. I'll look up where he finished in the Heisman, but he was right after Kingsbury, I think.
I believe that's right.
Who went to the Patriots? But BJ Simmons put up numbers that were insane. Not the record anymore, but it's a guy to remember. Yeah,
Kingsbury kind of started it with Mike Leach, and then Simmons kind of took it to the next level, and they obviously had that really pretty special run of quarterbacks that kind of built this identity at Texas Tech in the wake of, no more Spike Dykes out there. So
BJ Simmons finished 10th in the Heisman that year, 52 touchdowns, 22 interceptions. By the way, 2003 Heisman voting, get a look at some of the quarterbacks on this list. BJ Simmons was 10. Number 9, Ben Roethlisberger, Miami of Ohio.
Yeah.
Number 7, Phillip Rivers, NC State, another great NFL career. Matt Leinart, USC won championships, top NFL pick. Eli Manning, third. Obviously, could be a Hall of Fame quarterback. But the winner of that Heisman that year was Jason White out of Oklahoma.
Jason White, as I recall, lives on like a farm somewhere in Oklahoma and does not have any working knees, but like kind of just chills. And I talked to him for a story a few years ago. He just he's very like a normal dude. Like, I think he understood his physical limitations did not allow him to like have a super crazy NFL career, but he's beloved in Oklahoma and there's worse things you can do. Jason White's not the best example because he won a bunch of stuff and obviously won a Heisman Trophy in Oklahoma. But like, I hope kids in the transfer portal era don't discount the value of playing 3 or 4 years somewhere. And maybe you're not the most special player, but like the fans are going to love you and they will take care of you for the next 40 years, whatever that looks like. So shout out to college football. We're going to stick around the Big 12. Somehow we got talking about OU and we're going to stick in the OU. Our guy, Jermaine Gresham, Oklahoma tight end. He was like 6'5", like 260, super fast. I remember just watching him being like, I didn't know that these kinds of players existed. Just a freak tight end as a part of one of the best offenses that ever has taken the field in college football, that Oklahoma team in 2008 with Sam Bradford. And it's interesting, like that team, other than DeMarco Murray, didn't have like a lot of great pros on it. Obviously, Sam Bradford went number 1 and won the Heisman, but he didn't have a great NFL career. And then Chris Brown's on that team, DeMarco Murray, Manny Johnson. Like they didn't have a ton of big time NFL guys on there. And Kevin Wilson put those guys together. Great, great team. And Jermaine Gresham, very fun guy, giant tight end with a lot of speed. When we're remembering guys, this might be a theme. But going back to Javorski Lane, I like these like physical freaks where you're just like, what's going on with you, man? You're just like, I have not seen someone like you. And Jermaine Gresham, I remember I was in college at the time. I don't recall seeing tight ends. I'm sure there have been some, going back to like whatever, the guys in the 80s and 70s and 90s. But I did not remember seeing a guy that big and that fast and that good in a position. So shout out to Jermaine Gresham.
6'5", 260, and he was a 99 overall in NCAA football 09. You and I,
that's most important. Yeah.
You and I put him as the tight end on our all-time EA Sports team.
Okay.
A couple of years ago. He had a 98 catch in traffic, 95 route running, 94 spectacular catch, and 89 break tackle. Yes. That was an impossible dude in the video.
All fair. I like all those ratings. All good. I have no issues with any of those things.
All right. And with that, we're going to do the one last thing on this show, and it's going to be about the College World Series. Also, the Jell-O shots at Rocco's. This is such a cool
No, I have a problem with this. I have a problem with this.
You have a problem with this? Okay. Tell me your problem.
So, okay. On the one hand, I get the tradition. Okay. So this place, Rocco's, I have not personally been there. I've been to the College World Series a couple times. It's fun. It's cool. So basically, you can purchase a $5 Jell-O shot on behalf of your team. I don't think I've ever had a Jell-O shot in my life, so apologies. But
really,
here's my issue with this.
You never had one, like not even in school?
No, I think I've had like maybe 2 shots ever in my life. Anyway,
I
think one of them was on my birthday. I went to this place in Arkansas that served them in ice glasses. So you would drink it and then throw it, and then the ice would shatter. And another time I was out somewhere in Dallas, and like an ESPN reader was like, David Auburn, I got to buy you a shot of something. And it felt rude to not, but that was pretty much it.
All right, anyway. Listeners, next time you see David Auburn in person,
don't do it.
Buy him a shot.
First of all, I'm not out anymore. Like if I'm covering a game somewhere, like I'm going to go get dinner somewhere. And then if I'm with some friends, we might go to like a bar or that, but we're going to have to sit and I'm going to have to be able to hear you talk. If I can't do those things, I'm not going. So sorry. Anyway.
So quit asking.
Yeah, exactly. My issue is that you can call in and purchase shots on behalf of your team and disseminate them. You should have to be physically there because this gets very competitive. And I like late, I don't remember who it was. I think it was somebody from Tennessee or somebody, but they called in like 1,000 or 5,000 shots something after a big win. You can't do that. That's that I get why the bar is not going to stop that. but it undermines the integrity of the entire competition. So I like the tradition of the Jello shot challenge at Rocco's, but in general I have some problems with the execution.
Okay,
you can't be taking phone orders. That's ridiculous.
I think that is totally fair. I do think you should do it in person. The leaderboard as of Sunday when we looked it up, second place is Murray State. Shout out to Murray State with 5,700. Third place was Arkansas with 4,900. First place was LSU with nearly 11,000. LSU running away with it. I gotta say, also, like, I love the makeup of this College World Series.
Yeah, it's great.
Like, there had been concern in recent years that kind of the SEC and ACC made up the whole field. I think the SEC had like 6 of the top 7.
Yeah, this year it's 7 conferences
in the tournament.
And no returners.
7 conferences out of 8 spots, nobody returned. You've got awesome. Arkansas and LSU from the SEC. Got Oregon State, who was an independent / Pac-12. UCLA from the Big Ten. Louisville from the ACC, Arizona from the Big 12, Coastal Carolina from the Sun Belt, and Murray State from, I think, the OVC. And, like, that's what college sports is about, man.
Mm-hmm.
You got a couple of underdogs, mid-major schools make it to this spot. Murray State's got this tiny stadium compared to LSU, which has this giant NIL roster and everything. Like, it's fun that these teams make it here, and you need to keep that fresh and new faces and stuff like that. I've been watching some of the College World Series.
It's cool. It's fun.
I don't normally do that. And when it's all SEC teams, I don't care as much either. So it's cool that happened. Jello shots are good, but you should order them in person.
Big Ten, get your game up. Get your game up.
By the way, also, that's 3 former Pac-12 teams that made it. Oregon State, UCLA, Arizona. Rest in peace / welcome back to the Pac-12, which may have some news this week.
I'd also like to call my shot that as we're recording, Adam Scott is 2 shots back. Adam Scott's going to win the U.S. Open today. So I look forward to taking a victory lap on our next show.
All right, that's going to do it here. Again, please, bunchformationpod@gmail.com for everything. Bunch Formation on all the socials. Please leave us a 5-star review. It really helps. We've been doing this for a few weeks now. Having a lot of fun. Putting the work in to do it. We got video game news coming soon. And that'll be fun. So,
quick housekeeping, Chris.
Yes.
No second episode this week. We'll be back next week.
Maybe. TBD on if we'll have a second episode this week. I'm traveling to Michigan. Depends when Auburn gets back from North Carolina as well. Yeah. We may try to get it in because I think one of the video game embargoes is this week.
Okay.
We'll talk about it afterward, but may or may not have a second. may or may not have a second episode this week. We will see.
Okay.
But for everybody who has been listening, thank you very much. For David Ubben, I'm Chris Vanini, and we will talk to you at some point in the future.